I feel like going to 80, mainly because this gear is so expensive and sometimes you get snagged on the bottom. But 65 from there, run a 8mm bead to a VIP line lock. It's an anti-twist slider, and the cool thing about that is there's a little notch on the backside. So when I made these years ago, the reason why I came up with that is a few of my rods, when we get snagged up, you just apply some pressure and the line would snap. And after a while you're thinking, oh, it's just bad luck, you know, it's a sharp rock or something. And no, I realized what it was. The rods that had more time logged on them, had more 360s ran on them, the line was weaker than the ones that were brand new in the rod lockers. When those would get hung up, you couldn't break it off. You had to tie it to a cleat and use the boat to snag it off. So I realized that the lines were getting twisted and weak, and every time we went to deploy a rod, it was a common thing to like unravel the end and then try and get it out. So I was like, gosh, you know, how could we make something that's still like the slider? I like seeing the rod tip bow when a fish is nibbling. How can we make something that will stop that? And that's when I came up with the idea. Anyway, 10 years later, now we've ventured with Pro, and now we've come out with the VIP line lock. From there, I like a bead chain. This is probably the most important thing with this whole 360 stuff, and it's what we call the bumper. And it's a sectional line from the sectional line that goes from your main line to the front of your flasher, whatever kind of 360 flasher you're running. The distance and the diameter are crucial. So as Jared was saying earlier, there's a lot of companies out there making mono bumpers, and there's even some making titanium bumpers. I'm still kind of old school in the fact that I run 40-pound and 50-pound mono, and the reason being is I can tie them myself, I can adjust them myself. I've never had a problem with their failing. I trust my knots, and I know what hardware I'm putting on them. And being able to adjust is crucial, because this is the whole art of 360s that we figured out the last decade, was this distance changes everything. Probably the best way to explain it is your 360 is going to do a full arc. By changing this distance, if you make it longer, now it takes longer for that arc to make a full rotation. Let's say the boat was going the same speed. It's going to take longer for that to make the full rotation. But now if you shrink it up, it's going to go faster. And so by knowing that and being able to adjust that, now you can mix and match for certain fisheries. Like at Drano in the toilet bowl, when we're trolling super slow, I'm going to have a short bumper. This is 18 inches. And sometimes I might even have some shorter than that. And that the reason for that is because we're trolling so slow, it allows that flasher to rotate quicker at slower speeds. And the whole thing behind it is the more your flasher rotates, the more action it's going to translate to whatever kind of bait you have. So that's the biggest thing with the 360 is making sure that your lure is kind of darting and dashing at some sort. It doesn't have to be super erratic, but it has to do something. And that's what they figured out. And that's when we went to the 360s, we were like, this is like the craziest thing ever. We've never had this good of fishing. And what it is, you know, the lures are spinning, herring, spinners, super baits, whatever it is. And there's so many fish that would come up, look at your bait, and then turn away. And they'd come up, smell it. They might even bite it and not telegraph to the rod. You didn't even know it, and they turn away. But now, when you're paired with a 360, and they come up and look at it, this thing kind of darts and dashes, and it's almost like, you know, if you're playing with a cat, you know, a fake mouse, and you're kind of entice them to bite. That's the same thing that's going on with the 360. So super critical wherever you're fishing with the 360, you make sure that your leader isn't too long to where it's not getting action translated from the flasher to the bait. So from there, I got a bead chain, 40-pound mono. I like to adjust it, like I just told you. 18 inches is kind of standard for slow trolling. You can go slower, you can go longer. When I'm at buoy 10, I run like a 33, 35. And the reason why I go so much longer is because it's easier to speed up your boat than it is to slow it down. And so down there, you have a lot of undertows and currents, so your rod's already thumping too fast. You need a way to slow it down. You're looking for about a bead a second, 1001, 1002. When you get that rod to pause, and the more you 360 fish, you'll remember this. Instead of just having your rod do a 360, okay, that's fishing, that's going to catch fish. But when you can get a rod to go down, come up, and slap, and almost stop for a second, and then load up, when I see that, I tell the people in the boat, like, watch that rod. That rod's going to get bit. And about most of the time, it does. And what it is is it's just a little bit more pause. That thing's spinning, the flasher loads up, the rod tip drops down, and it's springing it forward. So instead of getting what I think it is, instead of just getting the side to side, that rod tip loads up, the flasher finally can't take enough, and it fires forward, and so now you're getting an oval versus just a straight center. From there's a lot of 360 flashers. Obviously, the Pro Troll is the most common. It's the one everyone started out with. Works very well. This one, particular one, is a Brad 360 Evolution. It's kind of unique in the fact that it has a built-in breakaway with the built-in bungee system to help keep your fish on there. The other thing is it's adjustable. So on this flasher, there's 3 settings: a top hole, middle hole, and a bottom hole. The way you set it up is you unsnap your bumper. It comes with this little piece of hardware, and then you just thread it through the hole. So the top hole on this flasher is going to be very similar to a Pro Troll. In fact, it's going to act the exact same. There's a little clip on the back side. You just simply plug it in. When it's in that mode, that's fishing. That's going to do a 360. When a fish strikes, it detaches from the back side, and because it's detached from the back side, that flasher is not going to catch the water, and now you're going to be able to feel the fish. You're going to fight it better. With that, there's 18 inches of elasticity with a 130-pound Dacron cord in there, so you're not reluctant on just the bungee to land your fish of a lifetime. That thing is going to hold up. At Drano, I like to go with the middle hole. The middle hole, because it's kind of in between. It's going to troll best like 1.1 to 1.5. And the reason why this trolls slower than a Pro Troll and some of these other flashers on the market is because if you look at it, we just now essentially create a lead edge that's going to catch the water. And so that's going to catch the water, forcing that flasher to thump at slower speeds. Where if we towed from the front, now you're 100% reluctant on whatever tail fin contraption to make that flasher to do a 360. Unfortunately, now you're dictated by speed. In order to get it to do a full rotation, you have to get up to a certain speed in order to do that. With this flasher, you're able to go slower, and so there you have it. There's another setting, which you probably won't ever use. That was designed mainly for sitting on anchor, like 1 mile an hour. There's times we use it, but most of the time it's not. It's either the middle hole or the top hole on that flasher. I always like to put a little dew lock on the back side of my hardware. And the reason being, that way it's real quick. You can change out your leaders. Regardless of whatever hardware you're using on your flashers or your leaders, you just snap it on and you're good to go. But do you guys have any questions on that? I think that's kind of the basic rundown. I think a lot of us are already starting to do is that same setup on rods. Line counters are pretty important. Keeping track of your line counters is important. So the other thing you may or may not know, if you've lost some line because of a snag, this thing is calibrated off a full spool, and it doesn't matter manufacturer. You want all your rods to be the same. That way you can help each other. But if you lost half your spool diameter, now your line counter is not going to be accurate. And it took me a while to figure that out. I had one rod, and I just thought the guy ate way too many bananas or something, because he was the only one that didn't get bit. And so we fished the morning, and then we went hover fishing. I didn't have my hover rods, so we used our big trolling rods for hover fishing. And I told everyone, hit the bottom, come up 2 cranks. And again, he was the only one not catching fish. Well, he hit bottom, and instead of 27 feet at Drano, he was like going 40-some feet at Drano. So that right there, I found out the hard way, or he did with me, was it got broke off a whole bunch of line, and the diameter was smaller, so now the line counter wasn't accurate. So make sure you got a full spool. Make sure all your reels have the same diameter line, and that way you can really just help yourself out and you get all that the same. But that's the rod breakdown. We're gonna get right into 360s with shrimp spinners and coconut cut plugs and mini cut plugs, and kind of what I've found over the years and what I do and why I do it, and see if some of this will help you guys. So when we first started 360 in for springers, it was 2005. I was out at the Wind River line, and I already knew it worked below Bonneville. At that time, everyone thought that it was an upriver boot thing. This is before 3.5 spinners were thought of. This is before the coconut cut plug was a thing. This is before the minis from Brad's had a very good selection. But I already took it down to buoy 10 and tried it, and it worked really, really well. And so I stopped buying bait for buoy 10. It was just running the big cut plugs and original super baits behind 360s. So I knew it worked down there, and yet still none of us tried it for springers. We did the old tried and true triangle fish flash to a big blade, to a big old honking shrimp, Arctic prawn, and bigger the shrimp, bigger the fish. We pulled plugs on droppers. We used to flatline Magnum wiggleworts. But so 2015, I think it was, I was at the buoy 10 line, or excuse me, the Wind River line, and I was out there trying it, and it was kind of early in the season. And my good buddy Shane Magnuson comes over. He was going to Drano because it was slow, and he goes, "Hey, call me if that works." I go, "Okay." And so nothing happened. We didn't get bit. We met up that night, and Shane goes, "You're not going to believe this." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I limited my boat in 45 minutes." I was like, "Oh, cool. What were you using?" He's like, "The same thing we do in the fall." He's like, "You're kidding me." He's like, "Yep, it worked." He goes, "Did you get any at the wind?" I go, "No, I didn't." So anyway, the next day, we go out there just like we do for fall fish, original skinnies, big cut plugs with Pro Trolls, because that was the only real 360 at the time. Short bust, Super Series was never a thing. And we went out there, and it was the absolute best springer fishing we've ever seen in our life. It was a 2-fish limit. We got our fish every single day. The two of us kept it on the DL for about 2 weeks. We didn't tell anybody. Guys started to quickly figure it out. At that time, there's a lot of people that didn't even know what a 360 was for the fall, let alone for springers, and word just traveled super fast. And now you don't go down there without some type of 360 for springers. It flat works, and it's all based off of that, translating the action from the flasher to the bait and getting those fish to eat it. But so one of my favorite baits, I'm running shrimp spinners, is from a company called Colombia Basin Bait. They're out of Tri-Cities. They came out in like 2003 or 2004. They're the first ones to come out with commercial bait. When they first came out, like Hammers Outdoor World, we were selling a bunch there. And at that time I was carrying my own, but really at the end of the day it's kind of like, man, it's just easier to buy that. It's already done up. It's cheaper in the long run. And so, you know, years later I'm still running Colombia Basin Bait, and it comes in different colors, but you pretty much just want red. I've kind of already gone through that phase of my life where we had oranges and yellows and greens and blues, and to be honest with you, you just want them red, or a type of red. You know, there's times that maybe pink or something like that will work really well, but pretty much red is where it's at. So for shrimp spinners, that's probably going to be your #1 lure down there for Drano springers. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And at the end, after this, I want you guys to come up and look at these, and we can nitpick and figure stuff out. But probably one of the old tried and trues is what they call a light bulb or a green dot. It's just a chartreuse blade with a green dot on it. You can go as many beads as you want to 2 hooks. You can either use 2 singles, or like I've found, I like to have a #4 treble on a 1.5 or 1/0 single hook, and that's probably been my favorite. And I think the reason being is that treble will get down in the gill rakers. Using high quality treble hooks, they don't bend out. The EMK Gamakatsu or the Mustad Kevin Van Dam's, you see them, they got like a little bit more of a, they don't bend out like a lot of the other trebles, so you can get away with a smaller treble. And so the reason why we're running such small trebles is that it goes back to the whole being small and sleek, because we're in a tight confined area where we can't troll fast. And that's where, believe it or not, a #4 treble versus a size 2 treble, you'll actually see it in your rod tip. You're going to get more action out of the smaller lure as you will the bigger one, and it's because it has less drag. Less drag behind your flasher allows your flasher to work better at slower speeds. Just like the size of the blade. This is a 3.0. There's a huge difference from a 3.0 to a 3.5. 3.5 is the most common blade, and that's largely because that's the blade everyone's just started with, and that's what the industry saw. A 3.0 is going to work better at slower speeds than a 3.5 just simply because of the drag. But that's probably one of your most common setups right there. That right there, if you run that day in and day out, you'll get your fish. From day to day, there's different colors that might matter. That new radiator like lime green or metallic pinks. Some of your rainbow blades. And definitely one that you never want to leave home without is Max Smiley blade. So everyone thinks this is a walleye rig. It's simply not. There's times that this works exceptionally well for springers, and there again, it's largely because it has less drag. And the cool thing about this is a size 1.1. The cool thing about the Smiley blades is they're adjustable. So they're just a piece of plastic, and if you bend them, it's more sleek. It's going to spin faster. If you straighten them out, it's going to slow them down, and you're going to get different actions out of that blade, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. And there's times that the fish want a bigger blade, a 1.5, but I would say day in and day out, size 1.1, and any type of green finish is probably going to be your best setup. So I think we should just get right into some of the riggings for these, and I think I'm going to start with one of my favorites, and I take just a coon shrimp. And let's use this one. So I take just a coon shrimp, and I straighten her out, and I stick this hook in there, in the meat like the EA. And it's tied with an egg loop, so I'm going to open up the egg loop. I'm going to stick the tail in there. And I'm just going to let that thing dangle like that right there. And so if you see that has kind of got a natural curl to it. And what that's going to do is slowly down there in the water kind of curl around. Like I said, at the end you guys can come up and see that. But so all it is take your hook, go into the meat, open up the egg loop, stick your tail in there, suck it down. You can even take it a step farther. This is how anal I am about it. See how the tail feathers or tail fins are kind of hanging out? I'll actually go and just kind of trim them down. Not all the way down so it slips out, but just enough so it's not catching water. A real common way that a lot of guys are doing it, and it just drives me crazy, but it works, is they're simply just meat hooking it on there. And that's it. That's all there is to it. If you have good shrimp where the helmets aren't popping off, that right there works just fine. Now, if your helmets are popping off, that's when I like to go to, where'd it go? If your helmets are popping off, that's when I like to use this rig here. And what it is we go on the side, rip the tail off, I bend it up, and if you see, there's a little spinner shaft on there. Take that spinner shaft, you stick it right in the end. And there again, I'm real anal. See how the legs are sticking out? I actually ripped those off too. Because I'm a firm believer that little bit there is going to keep it from doing the best it can. But see how it's got a natural curl? So that again is going to be down there spinning. In combination with the 360, it's really going to be spinning. So I want to show you guys something else too real quick. So leader length is important. You're going to want like a 25 to 28 inch leader. For years I didn't know what my leader length was, but my leader length is this right here. So I didn't know, and I didn't want to know because I was superstitious. So you can either tie on to a bead chain or a barrel swivel, or if you have good line, do an overhand knot definitely want to do it when your hands aren't pink. But that right there just saves you some hardware. And on the back of your flasher, you've already got bead chains and stuff that can, you already got bead chains and stuff, and then you just simply put it on your dew lock that's on your hardware, and you're good to go. And that's, I've caught a lot of fish off that. It's a tried and true, trusted knot. I wouldn't do it with anything under 30 pound, but 30 or 40 pound all day long works just fine. And here's probably the most common. Take a coon shrimp, just stick it in the meat. You bend it up, and you're going to do what they call a half hitch. And that's how we've done it for years. That's how we caught a lot of fish on that. And that leg will kind of lay down a little bit. It works just fine. One of the things I don't like about that versus this setup is when I don't have a deckhand, I'm running a lot of shrimp. If a fish bites this at all, you just cut off most of the shrimp, and then the rest of it will dang off, and then you're not fishing. The cool thing about this setup with the wire, the fish gets on there, and you can jerk around, you can tug them halfway to the boat, and that shrimp is still there. And I've caught a lot of fish where rods went down, where the shrimp should have been gone. We left it a little bit. Okay, go ahead and reel it up, check your bait, and they reel it up and the shrimp is still there, or it's actually gotten bit. But like I said, when it's set up like that, a fish can actually get hooked up and your shrimp is still on there, versus if you do half hitches or anything like that, it's you only get one shot. And this one here, kind of the same thing. If a fish strikes, it'll pop off. It'll just yank off. So that's something too. And at the end, I want to really show you guys if you have questions on that. Do you guys have any questions on shrimp rigs and how to rig them? The other thing I want to add is so when you come up here and look at these, this is 30-pound line. My treble hook has 2 lines attached to it. That's not to like for fighting fish. For me, that is for when the fish get in the boat. And what was going on was I was breaking off a lot of those trebles because they get hung up in the net and the fish is thrashing around, and I'd end up losing my rigs. And so I was only getting like a fish or 2 out of per rig. When I went to the double setup, now that leader will last until either it gets caught in the kicker or snagged on the bottom, and I'll show you guys how to tie that as well. It's kind of time consuming, but your leader will last all day, and it's nice because it kind of helps keep it straight, kind of keeps it straight out there. But so that's it for shrimp spinners. Let's get right into the kokanee cut plugs and the super base. So there's a lot of different concoctions you can do when you're doing your tuna fish, and everyone seems to have their like go-to, their setup, their favorite kind. I keep mine pretty simple. It depends on the species. It depends on the time of year. For these springers, I like a heavy shrimp. This is shrimp cure or shrimp creel, and then there's also the shrimp prawn right here. Those are what I usually put in there, and sometimes I'll put a little bit of herring oil. Herring was one of the last things that they're eating, and they're used to that smell. They definitely like shrimp, but those are the 3 that I use the most. And all I'm using is chicken of the sea, tuna, and oil. Depending on how many rods I'm going to run, I just start with 1 can. I don't think it's a good idea to do that at home and then drive down there and then fish. I feel like I do better when I have a fresh can opened up the morning of in the boat. And the reason being is I've had friends that made big batches. They went down fishing. The first day they did really well. Second day, not so much. Third day, they're like the coldest boat on the river. And I think what happens, even though they kept it cold, I think what happened is the tuna fish kind of lost some of its potency. Like when you open a can of tuna fish, and you can catch fish just with tuna fish, there's that instant aroma that comes out that's tuna fish. when it's exposed, I believe some of that like kind of bleeds off and you're losing some of that potency. So that's why I like to have a can opener in my boat. I open a can the morning of, I do my batch, and the other thing too is, what if they're on something, like they want an anise or they want more shrimp? I can add it right to it, and then if I don't feel like it's working, I can simply dump that $1 can of bait out over the side of the boat, grab another can and start something fresh. And so with that, I'll start with 1 can if I'm fishing 2 to 3 rods. If I'm fishing all super baits, I'll start with 2 cans. But I open a can, put it in a container, grab your oils, throw those in there, mix it all up. And the way we set way you put these in there, these are the mini cut plugs, and then there's coconut cut plugs. So they simply have a rubber band. You pull the rubber band off, you open them up, and you don't want to overstuff them, but you're just going to put a little bit in there, close them up. That's ready to fish, and you're going to fish that for no more than 30 minutes. There's times that I have found that with the smaller ones, the coconut cut plugs, you're going to want to rebait those even more. And the reason why I found that out was you know, nothing going on, we rebait a rod and it gets bit within 2 minutes. So that right there told me that these fish were there, they were seeing our gear, but they wanted that fresh, potent, that smell off the tuna fish. And so it's a lot of work, but you just gotta, you know, grind and keep changing your baits and keep them fresh, even if there's not fish caught. Because that's a common thing that happens too, is those fish come through in waves, those fish bite at certain times, and even though we're in a toilet bowl and we can see everything that's going on, and an hour's gone by, 2 hours gone by, and there hasn't been any fish caught, instead of just being complacent and waiting for the fish to come to rebait, that's when I'm working even harder. I'm rebaiting my rods. I want to make sure when that pot of fish does come in and nobody else is rebaited, that I'm the freshest boat with the newest scent, and when those fish do come in, I'm the boat that's going to stick out. And so a lot of times what guys will do is they're just like, oh, there's no fish, and they get comfortable, the sun's out, everything's nice and chill, and then you see someone hooked up and instantly like, okay, we got to rebait. Well, I want to be that first boat that gets hooked up, and so that's where you still got to keep yourself on a stopwatch, and every 30 minutes, even with shrimp, you want to just keep changing them out. And you'll learn there's certain areas you don't want to change out, because those areas are the best spots where the fish are going to be. So you're not going to want to have your gear out of the water. You're going to want to change baits, maybe at a spot that there's less action or you less chance of getting bit. So all of these are the same. They simply just pull the rubber band, put tuna fish in there. We'll get into rigging here in a minute. As you see, they come with a clear rubber band. I usually just throw those out, and I grab just our spinner tubing that we use for spinners, and I cut a bunch of those up, and that way you get some different colors. They come with a scent pad, which works. You can also put scent in there, but I usually just take the scent pad and throw it out because I want as much tuna fish as I can put in there. But by putting that colored tubing, you can really change the appearance of that bait. The reds, the pinks, the greens, and it changes everything. When we first came out with the coconut cut plug, that was a game changer, because that thing was just, it worked really well, and I know why. It's 2 reasons. One, it's super small and sleek, so it's going to allow your flasher to work the best it possibly can. But the other thing I think that happens is sometimes these salmon see a small lure and they just like, yeah, I could take that on. They don't even think about it. Where maybe if it's a big lure, they're looking at it like, you know, I don't know if I want to tangle with that big of a meal or bait. And so with the little coconut cut plugs, when I first came out with them, that was like, we were all in. I mean, it was like, that's all you needed. And some years it's like that. Now, fast forward the last 3 or 4 years, we like to let the fish decide. So half my rods are going to be shrimp spinners, half my rods are going to be with a combination of tuna-filled Brad's cut plugs or minis. And it's weird. You'll see like, okay, so one day it's more tuna fish cut plugs. So the next day I'll go all in with those. But it's a shrimp day, and so you got to have both, and you got to have multiple colors. So as far as riggings for those, this is your most common common rig for a mini cut plug. And all it is simply some beads with tandem hooks. With the mini cut plug, you're going to want 1/0 or 2/0. The most important thing is you're going to want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the hook points. So that's going to dictate what size of bead and how many spacing that you have. At the end, you can come up and look at this. The other thing I do is I drill them out. So by drilling them out, they're going to spin a lot easier. They're going to spin like a top. What it is there's a second hole, and all you do is take a 1/16 drill bit. You start in the top of the hole, and I'll show you at the end. You just simply go right to the hook garage, and now you have a nice big hole where your 30-40 pound line can spin on there. If you run them, if I don't have one that's drilled out, then that's when I run them like this. And that's utilizing there's a little hole in the backside. I put a couple beads, and that's it. And the reason why I do that is that's more of a wounded bait fish. It's going to roll bigger, and because it's not drilled out, it's not going to be able to spin on the main line. So the whole leader has to spin, and now you're reluctant on whatever hardware you got on the backside of your flasher to do the spinning, because the whole leader has to spin, and that actually plays a part in it. This is going to get probably some more bites at slower speeds because it's spinning faster. But there again, I've caught a lot of fish on that, enough to where I'm 100% confident in running either or. With the kokanee cut plug, you can do them both ways. You can do them just like I showed, utilizing the back thing if they're not drilled out. The kokanee cut plug actually comes with that whole stock. However, if you're going to run 30 pound or bigger, you need to drill them out still, because there's not quite enough clearance. But this is the rig that we came out with when we first started fishing them, and it's utilizing a bobber stop. It wasn't to adjust your hook spacings at all. It was just simply weight. Less weight allows that bait to flash, to dart and dash a lot easier. And so all it is 2 1/0s tied fairly close together with a bobber stop, 1 bead, and then up through the hook garage. And that is probably my #1 way to fish that. It's gonna spin on the main line. Super light, super effective. This is like probably how I run them most of the time, if I'm going to run them at all. And you can do the same thing with the mini, do the bobber stops, but I feel like the reason why I don't use the bobber stop is it's a larger bait and there's more drag, so it's more pressure on that bobber stop. So I've had the bobber stop slide down when I didn't want it to. So that, therefore, when you stack the beads, it can't slide down. That's as far as it'll ever go. Where the kokanee cut plug doesn't have that drag because it doesn't have the face, and so a single bobber stop works just fine. When you do the bobber stop, you're going to want to get it where you want it and then cinch the heck out of it. Like I said, it's not about adjusting. You definitely don't want to make the mistake. I have guys that try it like that. That's just not a good presentation. That's too far of a hang back. The fish don't want that. They want tight, sleek. They want it to look like something they grew up on, something that they can fit in their whole mouth, and so that's where that comes into play. So, and like I said, you guys can come up and take pictures of all this stuff, and whatever questions you guys got, we'll do a tight knit Q&A. But I think that's about it, guys. If you guys have any questions, we can start that part of it.
How did you make your concoction there? That's kingfish and what?
So that's just simply when I'm going for spring chinook, chicken of the sea, tuna and oil, and it had shrimp, prawn, and herring oil. And that was, you know, you can use anything like bloody tuna. Sometimes those springers get on an anise bite, so I'll have anise in the back of the boat. And like I said, that's kind of the nice thing about it is you're not, but instead of making a big bucket of it and being stuck to 1 cent, now you can, you know, change it on the fly. Because the other thing that happens quite often, and I will say this when we're super baiting, when you start to run out because you're getting bites, for every bite it's your scent leaching out or whatever, middle of the day, maybe the bite is slow, my tuna fish has not even been in the cooler, I just leave it out and it's okay. I mean, up at Brewster, Wanapum, 100-degree weather, quite all right, just leave it out because we're going to use it. And so when it's time to start a new batch, there's so many times I couldn't tell you how the bite is slow, we're not catching fish. I dump this old out, I crack open a brand new can, I start a new concoction, whatever I felt like they wanted that day, whether it's anise or herring, and that vibrant, fresh tuna fish, all of a sudden now we're back online when other boats around us weren't. And it's just nice to be able to change that on the fly whenever you need to. The cool thing is it's only $1, 89 cents to $1.20 per can, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated. Make sure you have plenty in your truck. I've gotten to the point now where I have a bunch in my truck and my boat because I'll forget, and then I'm on the river, I'm like, oh crap, the boat's out. Oh wait, that's right, I got some in the truck, and then I'll go in the truck and then get it all restocked. But that's kind of the biggest thing. And then the other thing too, I want to add, you can throw your old tuna fish overboard every time you rebait. But what I do is I push my good to the side and I put it right back in. And I'm going to fish that until it's pretty much gone. And what will happen is when you first start, it's all oily and soupy and runny. And as the day progresses, by fishing that way, it's going to get a little bit drier, I can then go and add some more scent to it and get 4, 5, 10 times the life out of that can of tuna versus just throwing it overboard. And it works just fine. And the other thing is I'm using that kind of as a measure too of when it's time to throw that out and start a whole new batch. But that's how I do it for springers, summers, and falls. Pretty much that same technique. And the only thing that changes is where I'm at and what the fish want. There's times that maybe they want more herring, like when we're at buoy 10, we're going to run more herring. I might have 2 batches going. I might have one that's what I kind of did there, but then I might have one that, well, let me back up. The other thing I'm going to try is garlic. So I'll run the same concoction, but then I'll take a bottle of garlic, and I'm just going to see. I'm going to run it on one rod. I don't want to contaminate everything in the boat. I just want to do it on one rod. There's tuna fish in there. I'll take some garlic. I'll close it up. I'll try to keep it off my gloves. We'll fish it. If it goes off, okay. If it goes off again, okay. So now we need another batch, and we're going to put more garlic in those. The thing about garlic, it seems like it's either they want it or they don't. And a lot of times when they want it, it's the hottest thing. It's better than anything you could ever put out there. It seems like when they're on a garlic bite, it's a no-brainer and it's good. And I think the thing that helps with that is when they're on a garlic bite and you figured it out, sometimes you're the only boat that's running that garlic where other boats aren't. So maybe that helps. But whatever it is, when they're on a garlic bite, it's super, super good. However, when they don't want garlic and you're running garlic, now you're just contaminated, and there's been times where I've had it actually go against us. So definitely something to think about and remember. So, in the adult,
more in the fall, maybe.
So that's the thing too. So you can, I'm sure it's wrote all over. It's in videos. I don't even know what they say. They say garlic after 70 degrees. I think they're right. After 70-degree water, garlic becomes really, really good. And there is a science behind it of why. And however, like all rules in fishing, there's none that are set in stone. And we're down for springers, and we've caught so many fish on garlic in 40-some degree water, enough to where, yeah, there is no rule to it. But you do want to remember, like summer Chinook fishing, 70-degree water or warmer, usually garlic's going to be a good scent to go to. Whether it's bloody tuna garlic, garlic plus, any type of garlic.
So
Bane garlic.
When you're hovering too, the eggs
Yep.
and stuff.
Yep. Try it with that. Yep, for sure. But like I said, the garlic has worked for the springers too. So there's no set rule to it. It's definitely something that you want to keep an eye on and continue to play with. But
so you're using the oil in the tuna in your batch, or do you dump the oil out?
I dump it all in there. Yep, I dump it all in there. Yep. You can use the water. The water works just as fine. It really does. And the only difference between the two is I've got it in my head that oil's better, but it's not. The water, it catches just as many. And the cool thing about the water versus the oil is you'll notice the difference when you go to to change baits. It's like compacted in there, and it works just fine. But like I said, it's stuck in my head that I need to have the oil. There's other brands that work really well, like Buoy 10 we ran out one year, and they didn't have Chicken of the Sea, and they have their, I think, Great Value brand. And you open it up, and it's like the whole tuna fish. There's like, it looks like there's like fins and all kinds of stuff in there, and you wouldn't want to eat it, but it's great for doing what we're doing. And that worked really well. I've had clients bring, you know, $3 can of albacore, and that worked well. I don't think there's one that's better than the other. It's just, for me, Chicken of the Sea, tuna fish and oil has been stuck in my head. It's what I started with, and yeah, you know, literally thousands of fish off that one. So, but yeah, I don't drain it out. You know. And there's guys that say, take the water, add vegetable oil, mix it all up, now you got the same thing. You don't got to do that. Don't waste your time with that. If it's in water, dump the water out, put it in there, add your oils and scents or lotions or sauces or whatever it is, whatever brand, and just fish it. It's going to be just fine. Yeah, you don't need to make a tuna fish can oil base by adding vegetable oil. You know, save that for frying the fish up. So, what other questions?
Do you prefer size on shrimp?
I do. So that's the other thing. So when I did cure my own shrimp, I used to segregate them. So I would be like big ones, mediums, and smalls, and I would save the smalls for when I'm sockeye fishing. Now I keep an eye on that, and I want them. And that's the other reason why I like going with just a commercial shrimp, because now I don't have a choice. They're going to give me what they got. And the cool thing about it is there's big ones, there's little ones, and there's mediums. And when I'm fishing a lure, I'm going to keep an eye on that. I'm going to pay attention to that. And maybe there's a day that the little bit bigger ones are getting bit. And then there may be a day where just the itty bitty ones are getting bit. And that's when, you know, you just really got to pay attention to that and hope that you start to see a pattern develop. And when you do, you know, hopefully you can capitalize on it. Usually the shrimp I like for springers are, you know, that size right there. You know, it's about the right size, about the size of your pinky. But most definitely, like these little tiny ones, they're, like I said, there's a time and place for that. Where you might see the small ones work better is on a peak of the run on a weekend day. So everyone's watching that dam count. All of a sudden the dam count gets in the thousands. It's Thursday, it's Friday, everyone's like, yep, we're going. And then everyone shows up at the same time. And now that toilet bowl or the Wind River is so congested that whatever speed we were going Friday now is cut down by 0.2 or 0.4. We're just super creeping and crawling. And now these fish have so much more gear to look at, let alone the gear that isn't working properly because we just simply can't go. That is when I've seen some of these little tiny shrimp, and maybe even go into a smaller blade than a 3.0, like a 1.5, or that's especially when we'll see the smiley blade do well is on those weekends when it's just so congested, it's so busy, and just a small presentation that's doing something, not instead of just sitting there dead in the water. So a lot of it's just paying attention to detail and hoping to see a pattern and remembering what happened the year before and the year before that and just sticking to it. One thing that I will say that happens a lot of is, for instance, you take this particular blade. That's probably one of the most common, you know, the light bulb. It's tried and true, it's go-to. And one of the things I see happen is there'll be some really, really good springer fishermen down there that these guys are 10%ers. They always get their fish. And then one day they don't. And what it is that tried and true is no longer true to that day. And instead of experimenting, instead of trying something different, like going to a hot tamale, kokanee cut plug, just giving it a shot, actually hurt them in the long run by not experimenting a little bit and just like, you know what, let's just try this let's give it 30 minutes and then we'll go back to this, or let's try that. And as long as it's fishy gear, most definitely in that toilet bowl you want to change things around. There was a day, I have a group from Arizona that fishes with me, and 6 years ago they started. Well, they're with me every year. They think I'm a god, and it's not. I got super lucky, and what it was there's 10 fish caught that day. We had 7 of them, and it was all super random gear that I just couldn't even believe was getting bit, but that was what the fish wanted. They just wanted something completely different. They wanted something that they've never seen, and it just some days it works like that. And so, what other questions, guys? Want me to teach you how to tie that knot?
Yes.
Let's do that. Number 4, treble. I'm going to go with 30-pound line, and I'm going to throw off a lot more extra just in case. One of the things that sucks is if you tie something up and then end up with too short of a leader and you're like, oh crap. If that happens, the one that's sticking straight up, that's the one I'm going to wrap around. And so I put the line through there. I then wrap it around the outside of that hook. So it goes outside and back around. Got about that much tag in. Then I'm just going to wrap the main line about 5 times. And it's going straight down. I'm going to pinch that so it doesn't unravel. Like I said, it's time consuming, but it's worth it. So now I just ran that back through. Now I'm going to pinch the whole thing. And so there's the one that's on the bottom is going to go around. And so you just go around, 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 about 5 times. You slowly pull that. I learned not to wet that with your tongue on a treble. And I cinch that one down dry. So now you should have 2 tag ends like that. That's when you're going to grab your other hook, and we're going to go with a 1/0 octopus gamakatsu. We'll slide it down. When I first started doing it, I was just kind of putting them on there like that. But now I've learned I like to kind of twist it up a little bit. Get the spacing that I want. I'm going to pinch it. That tag end is not through the eye of the hook. If you go through the eye of the hook, sometimes it's just the hook diameters, the ID is not big enough, and you can't get all your lines through there. So I leave that one off the side. Pinch it. I'm going to grab, do about 5 wraps. This is the tricky part. So you're going to grab that tag end. You're going to bend the tag end down. You're going to do another 5 wraps. You're going to pinch it. Now that line is going straight down. You grab the end. Now go through the hook. Go. So that line is laying on the shank of the hook. This one's straight down. And there again, the bottom one always goes over the top. Pinch it, pull it tight. That one we can wet without getting hooked. And cinch it all the way down. And that's, for me, that saved me a lot of time. Now that.
So is that on Facebook?
Mm-hmm. We're gonna make a, and then you just cut this tag in right there.
And I'll never remember it.
That's it. Yeah, I'll make a really good video showing that. When I started doing that, it just saved me a lot of time. Because like I said, it wasn't that we were losing fish. We weren't breaking off fish. It's when you bring them in the net and the trebles get hung up on the net, the fish falls down, and then that's when they're breaking off. When I went to that setup, it was like, now a leader of fish would fish usually all day, no problem. I've never had that break. Yeah, but fishing, thick cat, I like to run 20 pound, and that's really where I see it making a big difference. Is you know, heaving all those coho overboard. Those, you know, like I said, it's not when the fish bites or fighting them that we're breaking it off. It's as soon as you bring them in the boat, the fish is hanging from, you know, one of the hooks is hanging on the net, and then you'll see your line break, and which is fine. You got the fish, but now I just lost the leader, and now I got to make sure I have multiples. And maybe it's just me being lazy, you know, not having a lot of them set up, you know. But And then from there, you can just put whatever setup you want. My favorite, like I said earlier, is one 5mm or 6mm bead. Take spinner shaft wire. Grab that down there, and then all I'm doing now is 2 more 6mm beads.
Where are you getting your spinner shaft?
You can make them, but for that, excuse me, we need one more. For that, believe it or not, Cabela's has the best price on that stuff, and it's the reason being is they're super small wire. They're not a wire diameter that you would probably use for salmon, but they work really well for this. And put whatever smiley blade. Figure out your leader length. Do an overhand knot. When you do it, you want it big enough so you can get your finger in there and really pull it tight. Cut your tag end off. That's it. And when you do your shrimp,
Where's your shaft next?
so it's the second one in. Check this out. So you go in the side. Now see how I came out through the carapace, the helmet? If that helmet is loose, it's not going to just blow off. So I don't need a rubber band or anything for that because the way it's on there. But I came in from the side. You can go in from the front, but I'll show you why I like the side best. Then I'm going to pop these tail fins off. I'm going to straighten it out a little bit. And then I slide the wire down. And then, like I said, I like to rip all those little legs off. And that's it. Now see how that treble's kind of dangling there? It really doesn't matter. But if I was worried about it, I would probably just in like that, and that's it. But see how it's got that natural bend? That thing is going to spin in the water, and then in combination with the 360, it's really going to be spinning. But that's my favorite way. And like I said, it's not just me being lazy because a fish can bite it and not come off. It's a safe bait. I usually know that bait's on there until I want to either take it off or a fish takes it off. And so that's another good way to check that out. You guys got any more questions? I'll make one tonight. Yeah. I'll tag myself on Facebook and my company page too. We'll make a really good video tonight and show that knot and how to tie it.
So you're on Facebook. Do you have a website?
My website's getting rebuilt. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Right now, mainly just Facebook.
It'll be shared to the hometown page too.
Yeah, hometown will share it too.
Hometown what?
Hometown Ace Hardware. It's hometown/Oak Creek Ace Hardware.
All right. Right on. Thanks, Chris. You're the man. I've been with this guy. He catches the shit out.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you guys.
I wish I could remember